Grog.
Hey everyone, it's a Sideshed podcast, a podcast about the very real world of Ambridge. This is Peter Fickling. I'm here with Keri and Matthew as usual. This week I saw lovely pictures of Keri and Matthew on Twitter where when they were about 17, I think there was some kind of meme going around. Do you guys want to describe it, or do you want to hear my perspective?
You say what you thought of it first.
Keri, you looked like a very attractive Eastern European mail order bride. Not one who's just going to come over here and do as she's told. I mean, you look like you were going to, really stand your own once you arrived. And Matthew looked like one of Cooler Shaker hoovering the face off some unfortunate at a festival.
Yeah, I've never had that photograph described in such a way. I am half Eastern European, so you could be onto something there. But yeah, that was you had to share a picture from when you were 17 and now. And my photo, it was from the photo booth in Wakefield's bus station. It's a funny old picture, that. I do look quite startled in it. Someone said on Twitter that I was surprised when I was 17, and now I look like I know everything.
To be fair to me, so I don't sound too prejudiced, it is a sepia tone photo.
Yeah.
Sort of black and white sort of photo. So I'm not quite the monster that I might have sounded like. However, I will not apologise in the slightest for my description of Matthews. It was absolutely bang on.
Yes.
Well, I thought Keri looked a bit like a rich heiress that would be kidnapped by a bank robbing cult and suddenly joins them and turns up with a machine gun storming Midland Bank or Bradford and Bingley.
Well, exciting times. We just had our first ever podcast technical problem, something Keri and I were very used to in a former life. I mean, that was quite something. Matthew then had to go off and be reprimanded for pot plant mismanagement. Keri and I had some other more technical problems. So, yeah, here we are, back.
I think it's good to explain why there was zero reaction to something that Matthew said that was apparently hilarious. So... yeah, I couldn't hear anything.
Matthew said that you were so I can't remember the exact words, like an alluring exotic heiress, and that my rather crude caricature of an Eastern European mail order bride was unfair. Okay. So basically, Patty Hearst, I think, as you suggested.
Patty Hearst she always pops up in my algorithms because it was her rise to prominence, or her kidnapping was the year of my birth.
Oh.
Huh.
Yeah, so when I remember someone got me "You were born on this year" card about 20 years ago, and it was like the biggest image on the front was Patty Hearst holding a machine gun. Nothing happens to your personality by mistake, does it?
Maybe this is our Joy. Joy, one of the things that we keep on wrestling with is Joy's backstory. Maybe she is the northern exotic heiress who's been forced to move south.
I long suspected she was an undercover cop with her eye on Philip, and that just did not turn out to be true.
Yeah.
There's definitely some hidden depths to Joy that I'm looking forward to finding out about.
I thought that with the multiple pizza boxes that she had, I thought that there was a stakeout in her house with the police involvement. I was asking Twitter today and yesterday how old people thought Joy was.
I saw that.
And it was quite incredible how it ranged from 40s to 70s. So my guess was mid-60s.
I thought you were too high. I think she's late 50s. I think Rochelle is a younger woman's name.
She had that conversation about, wasn't it one time she was giving a couple of the young bucks a ride into town and she started referencing nightlife and shawaddy-waddy, and these kind of things.
Yeah, so she's definitely mid to late 50s or early 60s, because she's retired, hasn't she? And Rochelle has kids in primary school, I think.
Slight side conversation. That for me was because obviously a lot of these younger characters have been sort of retooled. They've gone from they were children, then they disappeared into whatever weird side universe the teenagers go and live in for 5 or 6 years, and then they came back, and Pip and Josh and Ben were all going into town to celebrate. Was it Ben's 18th?
Mm-hmm.
And Pip was a snooty cow to Joy, and Ben and Josh really had fun, didn't they? They got into the spirit of it, and they joined in. They had a good old drink with her, and they did that thing that we all do where the older person buys the drinks and gets tolerated by the younger people who sort of have a bit of a laugh with them. And that for me really cemented, Ben and Josh being the good guys on the farm.
Yeah, and it really brought out a new level to Joy as well, a new warmth and a new connection. It was great.
She's top 5 characters for me at the moment. I absolutely adore her.
Yeah, she is, but she's. Why does she keep perving over people?
Do you think she does?
Not only does she keep perving, why does she have appalling taste in men?
No, but she very clearly didn't perv over Tony, because she scoffed into, because Tony kind of Tony went to apologise to her about Tom's behaviour, and she basically said, "Well, it's absolutely ridiculous. You're not my type. I'd never go for someone like you anyway." And sort of Tony sort of rather sheepishly sort of went, "Oh yes, of course."
Went back to his shed and fondled the Earl of St. Germans or something like that.
Made a tiny little Joy Horville to put on his incredibly accurate map of the village.
Necktie, along with Peggy.
Well, no, he used some solvent to extricate the little tiny him from the little tiny Joy that he'd sort of they've been having his little mini fancy affair.
They ran the back of the ticket office.
Actually, I shouldn't have used the word perving about the Tony thing, but she's slightly perving over Lee, isn't she?
Do you think so? I think she's got a better sense of how ridiculous she is than most people give her credit for.
But so she's trying to get front row at the life drawing class, which is an al fresco life drawing class,
which is mental.
Yep, of course.
Which somehow Ross is cocking up. I don't know how you cock up an al fresco drawing class.
There's a scene in Amadeus where Salieri talks about Mozart's genius, and he talks about each instrument coming in and gradually the orchestra building to create a kind of a crescendo of music that the audience, it doesn't, the genius creeps up on you. It doesn't arrive as bluntly or as sort of like as obviously as like Prince or Beethoven. And this week for me was like that with how preposterous it was. It was the Archers' masterpiece of idiocy. Justin and Lillian's stupid row, this alfresco life drawing class, David and Ruth's incredibly crass reaction to their son finding his true vocation.
Yeah.
I mean, and we could go on. It was a mesmerizingly bad week, and I loved it.
There was one episode in particular which was really, really odd. That was Wednesday's last night, as we're recording on a Thursday. The whole, Justin and his metal detector to try and get a photograph from under the ground, which he didn't want anyone to see, which they wouldn't see because it's under the ground, and the pen that lights up from Damara. Also, the only tiny little nugget about the photograph was he said it reminds him of a time when he was very, very unhappy.
Yeah, I thought we were going to get like Jim light with this, except we don't really like Justin anywhere near as much as we like Jim.
But,
and I said last week I thought there was more to come. Do you remember when Lillian first found the photo and she said, "Look, it's you," and he said, "No, it's not." And then he tried to finger Chubby Brown. She puts it in the capsule. He decides to go and dig it up, but it seems like this is going to be a vehicle for something completely irrelevant. To make David think they have nudes. I don't really understand where they're going.
Well, that was very badly done, wasn't it? I thought the David acting at that point was dire when he was like.
Well, I mean, how do you not spot David creeping up on you?
Yeah.
Well, you can feel yourself going dizzy because the oxygen levels have just dropped. Yeah.
Also, the amount of wool he's wearing is going to create so much static electricity in the air.
I do feel like the writers and the actors should all have like a kind of the equivalent of a duvet day when they can just kind of call bullshit and say, "I am not going to do." The script editors just have to be told, "This is too much. I can't write this plausibly. I can't act this plausibly." And Tim Bentinck, I think he did the best he could with that absolute crock of shit. It was awful.
It was. I must have to say again, if Justin really, really hates that photograph quite so much, why did he keep it?
It's a plot hole within a plot hole within a plot hole. It sort of disappears like some kind of an MC Escher painting. Where does it end? It's awful.
Just sometimes I think, when they do these daft things, they think that if they stick a Lillian cackle on the end of it, we'll forgive them everything. And it doesn't work like that for me. That makes it worse.
That's exactly it. You've hit the nail on the head. That anything that can't be saved by Lillian / Sonny Ormond is desperate. Is absolutely desperate. And that's the Justin. I mean, the way he dealt with Eddie was appalling.
Yeah.
kind of like walking up and treating him, just assuming that Eddie was not an equal to be asked a favour, but just someone to be sort of,
Ed is the help to him, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. The hired help. It was awful.
Eddie managed to charge him 30 quid though, didn't he? And that was good. And then Rory really dealt with Justin very, very well. He led him up the garden path with the map and the shovel, didn't he? I said, you get on with it. And then he'd done it all wrong and said, well, if you'd asked me nicely, I might have helped you. But you didn't, did you?
And Lillian backed that up.
Yeah. So that was fantastic. He's not as sort of powerful and intimidating as he likes to think he is. But it does beg the question, like, do Lillian and Justin actually get on? They seem to constantly bicker, don't they?
You wouldn't want to be part of a couple that doesn't have a little bit of light teasing going on, a few jokes at each other's expense, jokes at your shared inadequacies as well. Like, that's part of the sort of, the fun of being in a couple. It's this kind of out and out hostility where he's kind of like, oh, and I've got pictures of you, airtight with the whole front row from the Darrington rugby team. Wouldn't want them to get out. It's horrible.
Yeah, that was
awful.
He
brought the receipts, didn't he? Like he was like, you put a picture of me in a daffodil costume in the time capsule. Well, look at you with your roots out in the back garden last summer.
Sunbathing.
This is bizarre.
Yeah.
Why do you need leverage on your partner like that?
It's supposed to be, and the other weird thing is it's supposed to be the light comedic side of the Archers. So it's supposed to be. This is supposed to be the moment where we're going to go, oh, thank God, a week without. I mean, Alice was only in briefly.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed. I think that's why I enjoyed the week so much. It was just a kind of the eye in the center of the storm after all of the Kirsty plotline, all of the Alice plotline. It was nice to have a silly week, but then also incredibly irritating that it was this preposterous Lillian and Justin thing.
There was a bit, I felt like like you said, Keri, the bit where Rory kind of put Justin in his place. This scene where he was like, seemed like he was like scratching at the ground with his bare hands while Rory cackled above him. It reminded me, but it's like something out of There Will Be Blood.
Rory with a milkshake.
Yes. Yeah, Rory with a milkshake.
I suck your milkshake, Justin.
There were some terrible lines, I thought, this week. So when that was happening with Rory, Justin sort of went, "You'll hear about this." And it was, you could imagine him like shaking his fist as if he's in a comic.
Rory's turning into a very likable character. He's well acted. He's very well acted. And yes, he's got some of Brian's sort of... it makes complete sense. He is someone who has all of the entitlement, all of the sense of privilege that someone with his background, and certainly Brian's son, would have. But then being adopted by Jennifer, having his mother die, all of the public shame of being, having that awkward start to life in Ambridge, and now, he doesn't seem to be wrestling with it, but also dealing with, being bisexual in a world where that cannot always be the simplest path. Obviously, and I think that really comes across to me. Someone who is, he is quite haughty and privileged, but he also seems to sort of have that extra perspective.
Yeah, true. He's developing well, isn't he?
He didn't give a shit. I mean, when Justin showed up, it was almost like they didn't know each other. The way Justin spoke to him, and he returned in kind, didn't he?
Yeah, it's like, hello, young shaver, my lad. You just do exactly as you're told. It's like, you can get fucked. Actually, I have no interest in it.
He actually checked himself a bit, Justin, when he spoke to him. I thought he realised he had to behave a bit differently. He didn't do it differently enough, but, for someone to have to actually consider how they treat and speak to people, that's telling.
Do you think it was a kind of what were you picking up on, Keri? Was it a sense that Justin was like a sort of acknowledging that Rory's part of the correct class in the village, that he at least had to be on some semblance of good behaviour because obviously he knows Brian? And
not class. That wasn't what I was thinking. I just thought, to get something that I want, I need to behave in a different way.
Transactional.
Yeah. So very selfishly based. Not to do with that. I don't think he was just, oh, hang on a minute, I better be nice here because I want him. I need things from him. Yeah, transactional.
And did you feel the exact reverse with Eddie? Because I think Matthew was hinting, and I definitely said that his behaviour towards Eddie, well, it made me absolutely furious.
Yeah, he was definitely snapping at him as if he was some kind of oik servant.
But, I mean, Eddie blinded him with science because he said detectorist, and Justin was like, "Oh, what?"
But it was the same incredulity he was using when Tony was like, "Yeah, they're like big trains, but smaller trains." What, you made them yourself?
One thing I liked, I think there have been some great things recently that, remember we said Fallon dropped a bomb on Jenny, and I thought Rory in this one, there was one thing that really stood out in episode 1 where he said, "You can't dig up the time capsule because it goes against the moral code of the
I love
the project."
The moral code.
And he went, moral code, and he went, "You've heard of them, right?"
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The moral code of the capsule. That was brilliant.
It reminded me of the do you know in Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they're digging in the wrong place, and they get really excited and realize they're going to be the ones that get to it first.
That was going to be Tom Selleck. Tom Selleck had the role, but it clashed with Magnum.
Yeah, hasn't he debunked that?
It wasn't quite that simple. It wasn't that. It wasn't just. He didn't turn the role down. He simply couldn't take it because of Magnum. But that he was the he was the forerunner, and he would have probably got the role.
I knew that he was in the running for it, but I wasn't sure the part that I wasn't sure if it was that he turned it down was actually true. One
thing we should do is post to Twitter. There is a scene from Magnum which is truly
that helicopter
astonishing.
One with the bird.
Is this the parrot
Don't say
scene?
anymore. Yes, but we can't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Well, all I'm going to say is I posted that to Twitter when I first saw it, and I believe way back in the eons of time, Keri responded to my tweet.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. It was amazing.
It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen, because I remember someone sent it to me, and I got about 25 seconds in, and I was thinking, well, this isn't all that it was cracked up to be. This was massively oversold. And then I realized it's almost impossible to oversell this cultural lodestone. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I've since gone on to a Magnum page and found out the entire details of that episode and how to find it and what the context of everyone in that scene is.
Excellent.
Which, does it ruin it? I'm not sure. I mean, to be honest, when the aliens arrive and they say, "Explain your culture to me," I'm just going to play them that clip.
And be proud as well. Say, bet your culture's not as good as that.
It'll be a bit like the Mars Attacks, where they kill the dove.
Turns out they're idiots.
I love Mars Attacks so much. Yeah. Such a wonderful film.
Need to watch that again. Definitely.
Speaking of aliens, David and Ruth, their reaction to Ben and his nursing ambitions.
Sorry to interrupt, Keri, but if we should have I know we don't do series, but we should have once every 20 episodes, we should try and do kind of top 10 tenuous segues, because that one was fantastic. I mean, I pride myself on a tenuous segue, but that was a very good bit of crowbarring.
Oh dear. No, they were hateful about Ben, weren't they? Really. I know you mentioned it a bit earlier, but I wanted to go back because, your son says to you that they want to make a difference to people's lives and feel a vocation within them. And they've only been at uni a year. They're not that into it. So what you say to this person who's saying they want to do this great thing is, you can't just be a layabout. When he said he wasn't happy at uni, it's like, well, listen to your boy first. And you can't give up a year of learning.
Yeah, he said to him, "You're not just going to hang around here." I was like, yeah right. Of course you're not going to hang around here.
Who would do that?
With you two dry shites? Yes. Of course not.
Ruth had the good grace to sort of acknowledge that it's been a weird year to be a student. That you would, of all the years to be a student, this is one that's been sort of massively compromised and a bit difficult. And obviously, a little bit of kind of a more up-to-date pandemic plot for the Archers. Yeah. But it's not like he said he wanted to be a hedge fund manager or something.
I know.
It's like, be a nurse. I mean, it should be music to your ears. I mean, I'd be over the moon if Cyrus became a nurse.
Exactly. And he's even, he's sorted out volunteering to visit the elderly who are isolated in their homes as well. And even then, I think it was David said something like, well, you can't just change your mind again in 6 months' time.
It's a perfect fit for Ben, isn't it?
Yeah.
That just him becoming a nurse, and they should, as a parent, it seems weird that they wouldn't just kind of, or at least at least have the good grace to be supportive in the moment, and then we would hear a quiet conversation later in the bedroom when they're sort of going, oh, well, I'm a bit worried about this, and obviously, like, we think it's a great thing, but it's just, society isn't as sort of understanding about male nurses as we might be, or something.
But didn't they do all of that in the space of 2 minutes? They reacted badly, and then David politely explained to him that it's different between animals and people, which I thought was very helpful. For example, you can't just stick your hand up a person's ass without asking. But I thought they were, by the end of it, they were supportive, weren't they? It was a real roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah, they were by the end of it, because he had to really persuade them that he's sourced this volunteering work and he's got a grant sorted out, or whatever it was.
Sounded very prepared. I mean, I accept Matthew's point, but I think my hackles were so firmly up, and they're permanently up when it comes to those two anyway, but there was a new level of hackle raising when they started to be horrible to Ben.
Can I loop back to something we were talking about earlier? You remember we said when Joy escorted all the young folk into town for a session, didn't one of the gang hook up with a nurse?
Yeah, that was Ben.
It was Ben. So he's basically doing this just to get the ride.
To get the girls.
He's the opposite of Justin. He doesn't seem to have a kind of very male ego. He seems to be very sort of driven, very happy to be enthusiastic about other people's achievements, what other people get up to. And I think, obviously, if, it's a quality that will serve him well as a nurse. I mean, I know that modern nursing, you can rise to very, very far up the profession. There's layer upon layer of training you can do to sort of like reach different levels of specialization. But fundamentally, at the beginning of your career, you are supporting other people, both patients and doctors. So I think, that side of him that we've seen when he's been talking about the various girls that he's dated, or, being interested in Leonard or Jill, that, should serve him well.
Am I going to have to explain Get the Ride for non-Irish listeners?
I assumed / understood that it means him having sex with people.
Yeah, it means get laid.
That's what Joy's after.
Yeah, I was about to say exactly the same thing, but I just don't see it. I think Joy is just sort of quietly enthusiastic about stuff, and other people are projecting things onto her. Everyone's like, oh, Joy's, you want to watch out for Joy. She's got her eye on you, Lee. I think she's as disinterested in Lee as she is in Tony.
Really?
Do you think she's not interested? Did you think, first of all, of her command of Spanish?
Brilliant. She can say that there's a fly in her gazpacho. I mean, what more do you want?
Yeah, which Kirsty said sounds quite advanced.
Yeah. That was a good impersonation of Kirsty. Sounds quite advanced. You sounded like that taxi driver.
Stuck in the back. I had some wine stuck.
You're like the taxi driver in Royston Vasey then.
Do you know, actually, all day I've been trying to do Joy impressions just to amuse myself, and I've discovered that I'm completely hopeless.
I absolutely adore Joy's voice. It's brilliant. And when she's trying to speak Spanish, and she bless her said in a self-deprecating way, didn't she? Like, the accent needs a little bit of work or something. It was
brilliant. I mean, what was it she supposedly said? Welcome, new neighbour.
Welcome to your new home or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there are parallels between Portuguese and Spanish, but from what I heard, she was like saying, "Get rid of cheese tits, so I can have a ride on you, Ninja Boy," or something like that. I don't know.
But can I ask you a question though? Because like Joy, we think she's like late 50s, early 60s. Lee is, what's he? 30s, 40s?
12,
yeah. Mentally 12. And if the tables were turned and it was like a 60-year-old bloke and a 30-year-old woman neighbour, and the bloke was trying to muscle in on the life drawing class to get at the front row to have a cop of the nakedness. I just wonder, I'm not that bothered either way, but I think there might be corners of Twitter that would be really perturbed.
It reminds me of those things. It reminds me of those stories where it's, and it seems to be predominantly in the US, but I'm sure it happens everywhere. Young female teacher is caught or sacked sleeping with students in American high school. And you read the comments and it's a load of blokes saying, where were these teachers when I was at school? And if you flip the tables...
Yeah, it never happens that way, does it?
Yes.
The comment.
And, it's equally dodgy So why is there this? Why are we dealing with this opposite here?
Yeah.
I made a prediction about help me out, Mia's love interest. I thought it might be Russ.
Oh,
That's very disturbing. Yeah.
Because Russ has, there's a specific term for it. I think I've alluded to that before. People who they're not paedophiles, but they are basically they're turned on by the power dynamic, and so they sort of serially go out with sort of inappropriate young women.
Where do Mia and Russ cross paths?
Well, I don't know, but I just felt this kind of. I was like, I was feeling pessimistic, and I was like, who's going to be? Because I'm so bruised by the Archers recently. I was like, who's going to be the person who's going to be most upset me? And I just suddenly thought, she could have bumped into Russ on a walk or something, and he could have sort of laid on his "I'm an art genius" spiel, and she could have fallen for it. But it's that kind of power dynamic, isn't it? It's sort of like you've got a great big hulking man, and there's a sort of I don't know. There's a potential violence to the situation that I think does sort of inform our discussion.
Okay.
It does make it a little bit more sinister.
Yeah.
The man leering at a young woman. Or maybe it's just us being old-fashioned and sort of like it's what we've all, even the most woke of us are sort of informed by our sort of generational sexism.
Yeah. I'm just not really sure why one is sort of more okay than the other. You have explained it very well, a theory then, but it just interests me that if the tables were turned, it'd be like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah, I've had my ass grabbed by ladies senior than me in bars in Dublin, and it just does seem to be this thing that you're meant to just laugh off and keep going.
Yeah, and the same thing. I mean, I used to be regularly had my ass pinched by when I was working in the West End by gay guys.
I've apologised for that, Peter.
God, I dream of that day, Matthew. I've never met you two in real life, and one of these days we'll be there and we'll pinch each other's bums, and
that's the first thing we'll want to do.
Probably a night in the cells.
Just wordlessly, we'll walk towards each other, a little bow, a pinch of a cheek. A little bow, another pinch of the cheek. The triangle will be complete,
and then we'll
raise a glass of. Yeah, exactly.
One great night.
Yes.
Yeah,
it will be great to actually meet.
So it's no secret, I am a massive fan of Vince Casey, and he did a fantastic job. What was your clever play on words, Matthew? The joy of Rex. So yes, so Rex was causing Lizzie heartache because of the Fairbrother connection, which we touched on last week, and in comes Vince to just slowly steer Lizzie around to seeing the possibilities, and it was lovely to hear from him. And to just hear Lizzie brought on board.
I think persuading Lizzie to do anything, if you're Vince, must be really easy because he was only giving one-word answers. He was like, well, what? Suppose. And she was like, you think I should do this, do you? I should do it. I should give the pigs. Perhaps I give Rex the house. And he was just saying nothing.
I don't want to get aggressive, Matthew, but what you just said didn't sound exactly like 100% praise of Vince, unimpeachable, wonderful Vince.
No, I like Vince. I like him as a character. I just mean that he managed with very little effort to bring Lizzie around. So either he's like some kind of savage genius, or Lizzie is very programmable.
Yeah, I've read as when you were saying it at first, I was kind of sort of saying to myself, well, okay, this is Vince being a fantastic therapist, realizing that the job is to leave a space for the other person to, educate themselves.
No, I mean, I think probably the best thing he did was the pig noise.
God, I must have missed that.
Yeah,
what pig noise?
He sort of said, but pigs have their certain charm, don't they? And went as if that was charming.
How did I miss that?
And Lizzie kind of, she was knocked bandy by that, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Oh my good lord! I've listened to it twice. How did I? Oh, someone have to go back.
I think you go off into some sort of world of reverie when he's speaking. So you go off into some twinkly winkly land where you don't really hear things properly.
What did he say? He said that it was kind of like, it could have come from the mouth of Chazza, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He said they were, they're interesting or they're fascinating creatures. Pigs.
They have a certain charm.
And then she got all giggly.
One thing I did wonder was a cynical element came in on my part, which was, I agree with everything that you've said about how brilliantly he just went, he logically just went, but why? And what's wrong with that? But you've got oak trees with acorns, and big houses like this used to have farms attached to them and all of that. But because he's got an abattoir, is he got an interest in these pigs for his abattoir? Is it anything to do with that? Or is that just silly? Because it is a small fair, isn't it?
Yeah, and I also don't think he would piss on his own doorstep. I think he's obviously quite smitten by Lizzie. He's not there for he's not there just for a bit of fun, is he? He's been very naked about his admiration.
Yeah, unless he wants the house.
To be honest, Keri, asking Peter to criticise Vince,
silly
you might be wasting your time.
I'm not a hypocrite, Matthew, because I've never asked Keri to criticise Brian. So that's. And also, he's not even my favourite character. I mean, if you want to see me get really pugnacious, then have a go at Emma. I think she's, the sun shines out of all parts of Emma.
No, I'm totally on board with that, and I'm glad she's now godmother material. This hidden woodland valley where it's utopia, where the pigs are going to live. I like the fact that they now opened Tuesday's episode with Lizzie and Freddie lying around in it. Freddie is such a whiny little git. So Rex getting this land, if it pisses Freddie off, I'm all for it. I'm not massively pro-Rex, but I like the idea that it's going to really wind up Freddie.
But it was a special place for him and Lily, and Daddy built a summer house in the meadow.
I know, but I mean, Fred is such a hard man now because Lizzie told him to go and sort Russ out. Go and sort him out.
It would have been more. It would have been more plausible if they'd hardened him when he came out of
the Nick.
Yeah, it would have been great if he came out with a mohawk.
Look, Russ, do you want me to add another tear tattoo under my eye? I thought not. Let's get this. This new drawing session, in order.
Why was Russ overwhelmed by whatever, and so couldn't do the life drawing organisation? What the hell is he doing?
It would make sense if he was but he's done such a good job of getting the art gallery up and running.
Oh.
Like, I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. And he has, in that chaotic environment with Lizzie suffering from depression, and he then was actually quite useful in getting her to and from her appointments and driving her all the way to so that she could see Freddie in prison. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, that was ages ago. Why can't he do this now?
Yeah, exactly. But they've done a volte-face, haven't they? Because he did achieve a certain amount of success professionally. He's set up the art gallery. He was helpful to Lizzie. So why is he now so useless he can't do this very normal task and require?
Yeah, what is he busy with right now? What is he doing?
The famous knitted art show. Surely that's the only thing he does, isn't it?
Yeah, he is attaché to Jakob Portland of Stoke. For some reason, I can never forget that guy's name.
It's really good that you can remember that.
It's freaking me out. Apparently, I wake up in the middle of the night and scream it.
Oh dear, strange man.
I mean, the only thing, as you're saying that, Peter, I was like, I'm building into this Mia conspiracy, but Mia said this other person doesn't know I exist. If she hadn't said that, I would start to think maybe he's seeing Mia on the side.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what got me thinking that maybe she was volunteering. She'd bumped into him. She volunteered at the gallery or something like that. I mean, you'd think they'd give us more clues. But this, I mean,
I thought she might be fancying a girl, but then she did definitely reference. She said he doesn't know I exist. So that was a bit disappointing. I thought it was going to be a bit of a, plot twist. It's a girl.
And she had the. I mean, the obvious thing would be if it was Rory. Then I thought that the way that she'd sort of dealt with him in the past, it was quite clear that wasn't going to happen. I think that sort of ship had sailed. He'd been quite patronising. He'd been sort of, sort of like, your little sister material when he'd been sort of tutoring her. And Will had done that incredibly weird. Don't you come near my daughter thing.
God, that
was foul, wasn't it? To be honest, I haven't missed Will. Does anybody have any TDK recordings of Dross, which was Ed, which I'm now calling Ed Grungy? He was in a band with Jazzer's brother, who I think never had a speaking role, did he? He just got mentioned a little bit. and Fallon.
Yeah, weren't there drugs involved at some point in this band? Jazza was off his face, wasn't he?
How many sort of people have they had who've had actual sort of drug addictions in the Archers? How many? So Ed is a drug had been a drug plot line. It feels like it hasn't. It feels like it's been fairly drug free. The Archers.
There was Nola Tando, wasn't there, with her,
Oh yes,
was it mushrooms? That she
yeah, and obviously. Oh, and then, sorry, I'm being very stupid. We're just talking about him, Freddie the
Yeah.
dealer. He did, yeah.
That's why Lizzie told him to go and sort Russ out, because he was going to bring back his old his drug cartel days.
Sort Russ out with some drugs. I was just thinking, Jakob said constant indignation is exhausting.
He was very likable this week.
Yeah, he was. He was good, wasn't he? How he brought Kate down to earth.
So when she was so unpleasant to Alice recently, and when she was so unbelievably unpleasant to Fallon and to her mum, I was disappointed because I felt they had started to round her out a bit more as a character and to make her a bit more likable. I felt it was always a bit unsupportable for her to be so wildly unpleasant. But when you heard her with Jakob, it did start to sort of, make a bit more sense of her recent behaviour and sort of bring her back in line, so make her more palatable, because I don't think I could have done with much more of her behaviour towards Jenny.
Yeah, it was funny how she suddenly remembered she had children, didn't she? When Jakob had brought her to heel. Did
that feel to you a bit like the sort of it was a bit of a tidy up by the script editors? It was like, oh god, yeah, we forgot about them. We probably need to tie. And it's and I did feel very good to hear Alice able to have a few kind of normal conversations with people. I mean, I know you could obviously still hear the hurt in her voice and the sort of desperate concern.
Yeah, she was referenced, wasn't she, earlier in the week? Lillian had seen her, hadn't she? And said they look stressed, and it's all this godfather, godmother thing.
The christening.
It's like a House of Cards moment, isn't it? Because we know what's going on, but Lillian doesn't. Yeah. It's really, I love those kind of things.
It's so painful. It's so painful, and I'm sorry to repeat myself. I definitely needed a week off.
Yeah, I liked Jakob reappearing. We didn't hear the main part of Alice and Kate falling out over godmother, godfather, did we? We heard them arguing about quiche.
It got reported to us via Jenny, didn't it? That was the row.
Yeah, so we didn't get to hear all that, which I'm grateful for. Yeah. And I to be honest, I quite liked Alice coming back into it just without Chris, just on her own, having this conversation with Kate. I was stood in the kitchen tonight. I was like, tell her, tell her.
It sounded like she was on the verge of admitting to Kate, because Kate was saying, oh, I've made a right mess of my life in so many ways. And so it was like a window for Alice to say, speaking of messes, I'm making one right now. Yeah. And I really thought that would be the final sentence of the episode, of her saying, I'm an alcoholic. Or,
who do you think she will tell?
I don't know.
It's got to be. There has to be someone.
It might be Kate. It can't just be. Maybe that conversation will spark her into revealing it. I don't know. I mean, Kate wouldn't be the best person to tell, I don't think, really.
I felt after tonight it might be Jakob. Yeah, because he was so brilliantly practical. I met up with an old friend on last Friday, and this is someone I haven't seen in well over a decade. And the last time we saw each other, it was a bit of an awkward encounter. And I brought it up last Friday, and he couldn't even remember it. And so I'd been feeling a bit sheepish about seeing him because of this, this thing that I've been worrying about. And it was absolutely lovely to hang out with him. We went for a lovely long walk, 2-hour walk around Greenwich. But yeah, and this, I mean, it wasn't like a massive weight that was hanging around my neck, but yeah, Jakob was very, very good at pointing out the sort of the ridiculously sort of distorted lens through which we can view our situation, and just saying to Alice, don't be ridiculous. Of course no one's thinking that. That's no, why would anyone care about being a godparent or not being a godparent?
And in the same way, saying to Kate, not everything's about you, and you shouldn't, step back with the indignant nonsense.
Yeah. Keri, you are a vastly superior version, but you're quite good at that, at just sort of cutting through the bullshit.
Yeah.
And so that can be a useful tool to have, in your arsenal. Talk to Keri. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It is as simple as I thought.
One thing that he said, which then carried over into his conversation with Kate, what he said to Alice, he basically just, I can't remember the exact words he used now, but he said, I'm not Kate. Like, we're not joined at the hip.
Yes.
If she has a strop with someone, I don't have a strop with that person. We don't go down that road together. He can be independent in his thought, which I think is, we all hoped with Jakob. To be honest, Kate and Jakob, I thought, were a really bizarre pairing.
Yeah, they are a bit
initially.
Yeah.
But when I heard them over lunch, I was like, yeah, it kind of works, because she listened to him, and I don't mean that she should listen to him, but he made good points. She took them on board, and that actually was the catalyst for her to go then and speak to Alice and start to mend what had gone wrong previously.
And I think any good couple, it's not about having shared opinions, about having shared values. You don't need to agree about the detail, do you? It's just having a sort of underlying, sort of aligned moral compass, and that will see you through. It's actually quite weird when you meet couples and they basically sort of either physically or mentally just sort of decided to go out with themselves.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
I don't know. Anyone that doesn't regularly turn around to their partner and say, "Sorry, you're a twat," is not in the right relationship.
Darling, sorry, you're a twat, or dearest.
I did think, having said about Kate earlier, about her suddenly thinking about her kids because Jakob made her do that. I'm not entirely convinced that that's the case, really, because I did realise, I tweeted about this. What did she suddenly think about them and doesn't normally, or does she actually think about them a lot of the time? And is that part of the reason why she's such a crabby old firecracker?
Jakob suggested to her that she's a self-fulfilling prophecy, didn't he? Everyone thinks you're this cantankerous screw-up who goes over the top and faces down everyone in the first 10 seconds rather than actually being reflective. And she pretty much said, yeah, I do that because everyone thinks that of me, which is, the argument's going round and round, isn't it? So
she had the moment when she did face down the entire family and make a convincing point business wise. She researched why she was legally within her rights to put a stop to the sale and to demand her share of the business, and they had to so it felt like a bit of a backward step that she's now Kate the screw up again, because she was starting to show some business acumen, and some ability, and no matter how improbable this business is thriving, or just against the odds is doing well.
I don't know if she's Kate the screw up, but she has screwed up in her life for sure, hasn't she? Really, her relationships with her kids are not what they could be.
Yeah, I mean, we've all got friends. We've all got friends who have, they don't live with their kids because that's the way that life has turned out. And you don't judge them, but the pain is huge. And I just can't imagine it. I can't imagine being that many thousand. It's one of the problems I have with Kenton. Kenton's like, he's a happy-go-lucky guy. It's like you left your daughter the other side of the planet. And it's just like, I don't know how he's just sort of, it's just like, oh, well, we Skype once a week or something. It's like, oh, well, that's not enough.
No.
You'd stay in New Zealand. You wouldn't leave New Zealand. You wouldn't, you would bitterly stick it out there until your daughter turned 18 and you could, you'd done a good enough job. But anyway, sorry.
No. And then just comes home and runs over peacocks.
The same thing with Kate. She's got, I know that she wanted to come back and spend some time with Phoebe, but Phoebe's now at university. She's got 2 younger children who need her. She should be back there. She shouldn't even be in Ambridge.
Well, there we go.
An avalanche of waffle is all we promise, and I think we've delivered. Last week I was waffling, as is my way, about how we want everyone to get out there and spread the word, and the reward. I think that's not too strong, bigger word for is Keri doing her special Q&A podcast. We're going to be producing some sort of marketing materials over the next week or two, and so we will be coming back with some more precise instructions on how to help us out with that, and we are in advance very grateful for all the help, and also we have seen a big uptick in traffic on Twitter, amongst other things, where people have been spreading the word, so incredibly grateful for that. Keri, you're the queen of Twitter. How's it been going?
Really excellently. Yeah, we're gently getting there. There's daily interactions with a growing number of people, which is fantastic. The Twitter handle for us is @thecidershed_pod. If anyone who hasn't visited there would like to, all comers welcome.
Keri will be arming everyone with lots of is it memes or memes to sort of drive some interest there. Matthew, so if Keri's the queen of Twitter, you must be the potentate of Facebook, the pharaoh of Facebook. There you go.
I try to be. Yeah, we are on Facebook as the Cider Shed Podcast. Again, as just to repeat exactly what Keri said, all comers welcome. And yeah, it's great. There's some discussions going on there. People are popping up. People having their little arguments and their agreements about what's going on in the show. Not just about us, but also about the Archers, which is great, which is what we wanted.
Excellent. And if you want to get in touch with us via email, it's hello@thecidershed.com. We're going to be getting a website together over the next few months, but in the meantime, we have our Acast site, which you can find on the Twitter or the Facebook page. And yeah, and I know I say it every week, but it really is, I wake up on a Thursday morning when we record, and I'm excited for the end of the day when I get to chat to these two and waffle on about the wonderful Archers. So thank you very much. See you next week. And thank you, Keri and Matthew.
See you next week.
Bye.